Well, welcome once again. This is the Doctor of Digital podcast. The purpose of the show is to transform your business and life with education and inspiration. I introduce busy business leaders to trends in business, technology, and marketing to highlight people you should know. Are you tired of working with companies that promise the world but fail to deliver? As a visionary business leader with a track record of predictable and profitable results, Andreas Pettersson, CEO and co founder of Arcules, has learned that trust is key. With over 6 years of experience as CEO, he has combined his passions for people leadership and technology to build a quality product that fits the needs of his customers. As a seasoned entrepreneur and intrapreneur, he has led transformation and focused on leading his team to create decisive wins for both the business and his products. On this episode of the Doctor of Digital podcast, Andreas will join us to share his insights on creating a vision for entrepreneurs. We'll dive into and explore how to navigate unified security, video surveillance, and IoT sectors. By the end of this episode, listeners will be better equipped to create a vision for their own entrepreneurial journey. During this episode, we'll do a deep dive on hot topics and creating a vision for entrepreneurs, including all this business biggest challenges and growth. I will leverage the expertise of my guest and how to navigate the unique dynamics of the field. By the end of this episode, you'll be better equipped to know what to do, and I encourage you to contact my guests, Andreas Pettersson, CEO and co-founder. And with that, I'd like to welcome Andreas to the program. How are you doing today, this morning?
I'm amazing. How are you, Mick?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm so glad you asked because I'm not going to complain because no one is listening. But thanks for being my guest this morning. Always curious on how you got into the field that you are. Can you tell us a little bit of maybe a pivotal moment or something that really sparked you and got you passionate about this area?
So, I'm going to start by saying I've been a CEO and an executive for almost a decade now. But when you look at what actually got me into this, you would be very surprised of how I got to sort of the top of a company and doing a successful exit just a few weeks ago, actually. I failed high school. I had 30%, I was there 30% of the time. I didn't have grades, and I ended up working in a factory during the night shift in this and all these chemicals. And it was a factory that were making any form of rubber parts for the automotive industry. And I was miserable. And one night, after having a lot of destructive thoughts, I was clearly depressed. I stood there one night and the machines were all open, all the alarms were going off, and I realized that if this is life, I don't want this life.
Hmm.
So I literally walked out, quit, redid high school, which you can do in Sweden, where I'm from, in 2 years with top grades. Then I went into I took a bachelor degree and a master degree in software engineering and electrical engineering because that had always been my passion from the
I see.
time I was 11 years old. And then, yeah, that's how I changed the trajectory of my life. It's kind of interesting how you have to almost hit rock bottom
Sure.
sometimes in order for you to realize and get the motivation to actually go do something amazing in life.
It's a great story, and it kind of relates to my personal background in a way. My father was a factory worker, and I said, God bless him. He supported the family. But I said, I walked into his factory when I was a kid, and I said, all I know is I can't do this because that's just a difficult job. And there were chemicals and things like you're saying. So what a different path, but it's very interesting background. Could you tell us a little bit maybe about some of the changes that you've seen over the last decade or so in your experience?
Yeah, so I worked in the software industry field and tech industries from 2007. I moved to US 2014. I was in Silicon Valley for 4 years there. And that's where AI started coming in. But then, as we know, COVID happened. And
Yeah.
I would say within the tech field, the remote workforce was
Mhm.
both disruptive, amazing, and now a lot of companies are in a change phase again from building all these processes and culture about a remote workforce. And
Right.
now they're freaking out because productivity increased during COVID
Yeah.
and then it plateaued and now it's dropping. So, a big, massive change that is going on in our industry that I have witnessed is companies now trying to get some of the remote force back. And I've seen a fork in the road where
Mm.
some companies are willing to take a lot of risk to get their employees back, while others go, we're going to be remote forever. And by being remote forever, we can attract the best talents out of these big companies who don't allow remote work anymore. So
I
that's
see.
currently ongoing right now.
Sure. I actually was in the Silicon Valley during the pandemic and area, so I must have been your neighbor at some point there. Could you tell us about some of the hot topics, especially AI? You mentioned it and not necessarily put words in your mouth, but that is an area that is a hot topic of that and some other things that you could address.
Yeah, so I was there when AI been around for a long time. Let's start there. I have in Arcules, I have ridden the wave of 2016 when it started becoming more mainstream and the things started happening. We hired PhDs that costed $400,000 a year in base salary. We
Mm,
build our own networks, AI neural networks. We acquired a lot of data. We spend a lot of money acquiring data to be able to train these models.
okay.
But then just within a few years, we didn't need all that much data anymore. And then we didn't need the PhDs anymore because now the open source versions of AI became good enough where
Yeah.
why invent your own when you can get something more or less for free?
Yeah.
And now it's a phase where it's moving so rapidly. And I talk to people who were in the tech industries when internet became a thing, when mobile became a thing. And they're all saying, what we're seeing now with AI will revolutionize how we think, how we operate, way more than internet and how the mobile wave happened. And I personally have experienced the same. Even though I'm a software engineer after being an executive for so many years, I don't code that much. And I was working on a little bit of a hobby project here at home a few weeks ago. And I started a traditional way, and I'll get back to how AI played in here. I started traditional way with designing it and sort of stubbing
Yeah.
out the code. And then I realized, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Let's just go and find some tools and say, tell AI what I want to do. And behold, it literally spits out code that is executable right away, and it's really good. It's easy to understand. It's well
Yeah.
commented. And there's no reason for me to sit and code it and spend a weekend doing something. So it's just the beginning. But I think keywords of what a lot of people missing with AI is it's a productivity thing and
Mhm.
efficiency thing. And I see a lot of people who are a little bit afraid of it. Instead, they should incorporate it into their life. They should get curious about it. They should spend 20 minutes a day learning a new tool. And that's how they not only secure their corporate career and future, but if they're building a startup, the level of efficiency they can gain from that makes them outcompete everyone else who might not be using AI yet.
Yeah, and it's something I can reiterate there too, because I know people are afraid of it and they say it's going to replace things. But I mean, look at any great revolution, the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution. I said, yes. Well, any big revolution, yes, things go by the wayside, but then there are also new opportunities and there are new ways of embracing the change too. So when writing, AI has been very helpful, just what you're saying. Things go so much faster. It's so much more efficient. So I use several AI tools. Can you give us some idea of what you would recommend and what you're saying as far as business leaders or business people should be doing there? And tell us a little bit about your approach along those lines.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to stay. I will answer it in two parts if that's okay. Number
Yeah.
one, I would say any business leader should, like I said, when it comes to AI, spend at least 20 minutes a day making sure that they understand how the tools might be used. The number one tip I give business leaders when it comes to AI is allow all your employees to spend 20 bucks a month on whatever
Mm,
tool they want, and I guarantee your productivity will increase. When it comes to leadership in general, I would say that I meet a lot of people who are business leaders who they don't learn to recalibrate fear into unfamiliar. and they spend so much time worrying about what to come that will never happen. And when they founded their companies, they were so effective. The company was growing,
Right.
but then what ends up happening, they're afraid to lose it and they start plateauing. And for me, a plateau is a temporary thing before you dip again and
Yeah.
start going down. So I would say the number one thing I would say, recalibrate fear as unfamiliar. The second thing I would say is remain curious. Again, many leaders I talk to, if it's corporate world or entrepreneurs, they stop being curious. They become the expert. And all of a sudden, they're not able to see what is actually coming. And they're not leveraging people when doing so. And then when they get into this, they start becoming so fearful that they don't take action and they don't dare to make the changes required. If it's employees, if it's the business strategy, no matter what it is. And the way they start unblocking that is start taking micro actions every single day. Because I believe if you take micro actions when you have plateaued your business or you're not scaling it as fast as you want to, you get information about what it is that is actually working. So if you now combine a little bit more fearless, combined with some micro actions, you will get a new picture of the world. And with your curiosity, you now become aware of what is actually going on in your business. And then the last bullet there is a 5-step thing. Use AI, use AI, face your fear, get curious, take micro action. And last one is surround yourself with people who have done the journey before. I can't tell you how many times I have met someone and they say, I've been in this game for 5 to 10 years. We're making really good profits, but now we're stagnant. And I asked them, how many advisors do you have? Are you part of a CEO peer group? Do you have a coach, an advisor, a mentor? And they just go, no, I have nothing of that. I have myself. And I'm like, yeah, the world changed. When you went into your dark hole the last 5 years, you probably forgot to check in on what else is going on there. And Mick, I'm a firm believer. You have a life now. And if you live everything and experience and learn everything organic yourself, you will live maybe 70 years and have 70 years experience. But if you surround yourself with people who have all done it before and that you can accumulate their experience, you maybe have lived 70, 80 physical years, but you have 1,000 years experience by the time you die. So I think surrounding yourself with the right community is the path to success.
And it's kind of interesting that you're saying to be open to ideas because I can think of almost any creative field. I'm a big music guy, for example. And if you ever notice when a musical band or an artist comes out, they burst right away, right? And they got all these great ideas because they've been honing their craft and working on it for a long time. And then there's that plateau you're talking about because by the time they get to their second and third release, like, well, they have nothing else to say anymore. It's like, well, because you're not stimulating anymore, you're not curious. So I'm curious then, how have you been able to sustain and how have you been able to? Because you're also hitting a key point. A lot of business leaders, they're very isolated.
Yeah.
It's lonely at the top, as they say.
By the way, I love your analogy with the musician. I will borrow that from you going forward because it's such a great example of surrounding yourself and be inspired. The more diverse thoughts and people you have around you, the more inspired you are. Some of the best musicians I have met, they consume other people's music more
Yeah.
than they practice their own craft, actually.
Mhm.
Um, I would say that what I have done is I have surrounded myself. I have a CEO peer group I'm part of.
Right.
I have had coaches and mentors for the last 15 years. I always have 3 people. I have a person that is I call them an organic mindset coach, meaning the person who says, Andreas, have you really slowed down? Are you present with your family? Are you really taking the time to do the things that fulfill you in life? So it's more a mindset person. I usually
Mhm.
have one person that is leadership advisor, mentor to me. And the leadership advisor, psychologist sometimes even, they push me and they push me hard on my beliefs. They challenge
Mm.
how I'm approaching things and how I'm interacting with others. And then the third, I hope I didn't mix them here, it's a business and strategy advisor. And the reason is that I believe that as soon as you get comfortable, you should think, why am I comfortable? What if the opposite of is true? What if I'm not killing it right now? What can I do instead? And I believe that constant curiosity, where you are, as soon as you get comfortable, something is risky. Like now you plateaued. Your business might still be growing, but if you're not challenged anymore, you are going to plateau sooner or later because you're going to inspire that mindset of plateauing on everyone else. What else have I been doing? I make it very clear what my North Star is. I focus a lot on where I want to go. Not the Simon Sinek start with why every time, where it's like, why am I doing this? Why? No, it's not questioning myself, but I'm very clear on what my freedom number is, what my focus is for my family, what I want to leave behind. And I define this every year on New Year's Day. I define I take a 10-year window and I add 1 year every year. So that way I have a 10-year floating window. And me and my wife, we spend all of New Year's Day without kids sitting down and planning for the future. And then we're listing things we want to learn, things we want to experience the coming year. And we also pick the word of the year. I highly recommend to pick the word of the year. This year for me, it was courage. But in
Okay.
reality, it probably was a combination of courage and brutiful, which is a combination of beautiful and brutal. um, and next year, it's restart.
Hmm.
And I already picked the word for 2025. The reason why it's restart is, and I told you this just before we went on here, I had been a CEO I founded a company. I was a CEO now for almost 7 years. And as of 1st of November, I actually decided to leave the corporate world
Wow.
only so I can do what I'm passionate about, which is helping other people instead on their lead with their companies and in their leadership roles. So restart is very fitting from that perspective,
Hmm.
but it's also restart. As soon as you fail at something, start again. As soon as you think a destructive thought about yourself, stop that, start again. As
Mhm.
soon as you hear someone complain about something you were doing, well, listen to them, but start again. And that's why restart, rethink, redo, like all of those things are what's going to lead my 2025.
It's one of the things I said, I think is interesting about what you're presenting is it's a life in balance, because there's a lot of people who will sacrifice family for their business or their real true passion and inspiration in life for other things. But what you're suggesting is really to have some sort of balance between, you'd say, family, business, career,
I
all of
think
these things, holistic.
Yeah, I really believe I will actually recategorize it as harmony because I think that balance, everyone visually thinks of this. I don't know, the kid, you have one kid sitting on each side
Yeah,
and
the
when on a
seesaw.
play. Yeah, thank you, a seesaw. And I don't think life and work is like a seesaw. I think it's a harmony and they need to flow together,
Mhm.
meaning because otherwise people get stressed and they think like, oh, I worked 8 hours now and now I got to seesaw the opposite way, and you have
Yeah,
like daily whiplashes. For me, it's a harmony where you need to learn where your energy comes from. And I met so many entrepreneurs who they tend to flip that too much and that seesaw effect. And what ends up happening is their loved ones will feel they're physically there, but not mentally there.
sure.
I believe in work life harmony, which is I'm a person, I work hard. I have days where I work 16 hours a day, but I also compensate it by in the weekend recharging my batteries. Or some other days I barely work at all and I take time with the family.
Mhm.
And the reason is I believe we got to exist in harmony. It can't be clear balance. When we all worked in factories or on the fields, the sun was up and there it was balance. Now I think it's harmony. They got to intermix with one another.
Yeah, and this is why I think there's so many people that have, depending on your age, it's the midlife crisis, right? So they work really, really hard and then they get somewhere in midlife and they go, what was that all about? And they're find themselves empty and find themselves really devoid of passion and emotion and all the great things in life. So I never had a midlife crisis because it's like, well, no, I'm trying to keep my life in balance.
I love that. And I've seen so many CEOs who have successful companies where
Hmm.
they are getting their dopamine hits from growing the company, and they work all the time. And then they might be married, they might have kids, but they stop getting those dopamine hits from their family because they've been away from it too long. And all of a sudden, they end up in divorces, they end up cheating, they end up doing stupid things that triggers the dopamine for them again. And I'm a firm believer that if you go into and you start a business and you run a business, you better understand how to get your dopamine hits and re energize you from your personal private life as well. Because otherwise, you will end up numbing yourself all the way. And one day you will end up doing a really bad mistake that you will regret for the rest of your life. I haven't done so, but I have had mentors around me
Sure.
early on that really warned me about the effect of not having that harmony and the balance in between all of it.
Yes, and the analogy that you make is that seesaw, right? So I put all the time and effort in my business, and I neglect my personal relationships, my family, my children. And that's why there are so many people that find there's some sort of contradiction between the two. But it's, yeah, that's unlikely how life is. And, you can go back to agricultural fields, right? The agricultural farming communities, they were very family oriented and they work really, really hard. I know farmers in my family, they work 24 hours a day. However, they're also close to their families as well. So if people in the past could have done this, which they did, why cannot we do this in our own day? You have to be able to be aware of these things and keep life in balance.
I love that. And that's a really good way of explaining it. The family life was still hard for the farmers, but they kept together and they still worked really hard. I love that analogy. Thank you. One thing I would add there to this discussion is that I think people are so distracted today with their cell phones, with their TVs, with everything else. And I think it's so important to check your emotions, sort of to understand, am I physically here or mentally here? I
Mhm.
meet a lot of people who are like, yeah, spend the time with the kids. But what they're really doing, they're on their cell phone all the time. They're
Yep.
talking to other people. And the kids will know this. I believe that you can be very successful, you can achieve a lot, you can do a lot, but it's how you prepare for it. And it's what rules of engagement you set down. When I became CEO, I was one of the youngest CEO ever to run a Canon owned company. And it was the same day actually, that I became CEO, my son was diagnosed with autism.
Oh,
And me and my wife, we sat down at the kitchen table and really outlined the ground rules for the coming 2 years. And we said, we actually divided and conquered and said, we're not going to put our marriage on pause, but
sure,
for the next 2 years, we're going to make sure that one focuses on the business and one focus on our autistic son. And
sure.
then in 2 years, if it's not working, we eject.
Mhm.
And I think having done such a thing taught us that you have to make clear rules and expectations, not only what you're doing, but how you're going to do it with your partner in life. And if you
Mhm.
do that, I think you become much more successful in the long run.
Now we talked about a number of things. We covered a lot of ground here. It's really like
Sorry.
almost everything, right? Everything in
I'm a
life.
very ADHD person, so
No,
that's why.
it's all good, but I'm saying we talked about changes and hot topics and, a wide range of things, but could you provide maybe just some actionable tips? I mean, because it's very insightful and I would even say, dare to say, philosophical in some ways. So what would you say are some actionable tips a person's heard and listened to you? What could they do today?
I would say that the number one thing, and we touched upon it a little bit, is there are three things they should do. The number one thing is clearly define their North Star, meaning where are they heading, who do they want on that journey, and understand how they're going to get there, and then tell people around themselves. Number two, for me, is extremely important, and that is you have to know your core strengths. You have to understand
Mm,
what core values you have and how. So basically, what are your strengths and what are my values?
okay.
Because if you're on this journey to the North Star and you don't understand that, you're not going to move fast enough. The number three thing, three that you have to do is you have to surround yourself with people who have done it before. You have to surround yourself. You have to, if you don't have a community, build a community. If you can't find a community, create a meetup.
Mm,
I think any leader, it doesn't matter what level you're at, you need your peer group, you need your accountability group, you need your community,
mm,
and you need to also go find, if it's not me, go find someone that is a leadership mindset business advisor for you and work with them. There are people that do this for free. They decide to be mentors for the next generation, but don't live your entire life trying to understand and master everything yourself. Learn from others, learn from people that are older than you. My first mentor, he was in his 70s when I
mm,
was in my 30s. I learned more from him. I think I learned 10 years of knowledge within half a year working with that guy. And he did it for free because he was bored. He had
mm.
retired, and he was just looking for inspiration from younger people, and I loved it. And I have his name was Ole, and he was amazing. So my point here is surround yourself with people who can inspire you and push you. That's how you make a massive difference.
Awesome. Again, this is kind of like philosophical, but real life too. It kind of bring it to bear. I'm curious now if you could give us some information, a contact information that a person has heard something of what you say and they familiar with your background. How do they reach out to you and how can they work with you?
So the best way to reach me is go follow me on social media. I'm on all the platforms. My tag is at Andreas the CEO. I would say I'm most active on Instagram. If people want to work with me, they can also go to my website, which is called leadersadapt.com.
Okay.
I post everything I use when I am advising, coaching, mentoring my clients. I actually put it into blog post form, and I put out a lot of free materials because I'm a firm believer that the more I give back, the more I will get myself. So it's like I think I put up like 20, 30 blog posts on there that are very clear tools of how you can coach and advise yourself if you can't afford me. I put up free how to find your North Star guides, which I
Mm.
is actually exactly my notes I use when I'm advising people and coaching people. And I strongly recommend, so use what is out there that is for free. But yeah, follow me on social media, ping me on Instagram. That's the best way of how to connect with me quickly.
Well, awesome. You got a really interesting background, not only from the very beginning of your young life and not doing well to turning life around and also not just living, but thriving. And that's really awesome. That's very inspiring.
I love life, Mick. I wake up every single morning. We didn't even get into it to now, but I have so many stories of why I wake up every morning and I'm like, I'm alive. Today's going to be an amazing day. And I really live life that way. I think life is long if you know how to use it. And a lot of people make life really short. No, I'm going to make mine long and I'm going to maximize everything I'm doing in life. And then I think I will lay on my deathbed and be really happy.
It just reverses the mentality of many people to live life long. I love that. I'm going to also borrow that from you as well.
Thank you.
Andres, thank you so much for taking some time out. I appreciate everything you've been able to share, and I appreciate your insights and everything that you've been able to do. Thank you so much for your time. Much obliged.
Thank you so much for having me and amazing questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. If you like what you're hearing, I certainly hope that you do. Make sure that what you're also doing is subscribing, sharing, positively reviewing, and also telling other people about the Dr. Digital podcast. I want to thank the supporters of the program, that is the publishers of both Burning America and On Track, Ian Hunter, for their support of the program. And of course, if you want to reach out to me, I'm the idea to author coach, guiding your journey from draft to a best-selling author. What I do is help people write books, and what I do is to help people make money and having a bestseller. So, in any case, hopefully that you have enjoyed the program today. We've got more episodes coming your way. Until next time, this is the Dr. Digital signing off. Day Asphalt.